going at each other's throats, but there's always something, and one of the very best at covering then, Ross Dellenger of SI.com joins us. He's been on the show many, many times before. Ross, it never ends, does it? There's always something.
Always something indeed. It's no off season any longer in college football.
Where do you think we will be as college football itself in 5 years? Will some of this just kind of calm down? Will it get better? And I'm not saying it's bad, but do you feel like where are we going to be, you think, in 5 years?
It's a tough one. I think that we certainly will be looking at a different structure to the NCAA governance and in football, college football governance in general. I think within a matter of months, you'll see pretty significant changes from the Transformation Committee. Seeing some of their concepts and such leak out a little bit. I think lately you've seen a lot of pretty high profile athletic administrators talk about, FBS football, the 130 FBS teams splitting off and kind of being governed by a different entity than the NCAA. And that feels like the first step in kind of an incremental journey to the end of the road, which feels like some kind of professionalized college sports, college football specifically. So that's where I think we're going to be. I don't know that we get to the end of the road in 5 years, but we're going to be, we're taking incremental steps to that end.
Ross, do you see any like these kind of doomsday scenarios that are thrown out there of Super Conference or the SEC doing their own title game? Is that more just positioning so that other things move than it would be actual plans?
Yeah, I don't really see that happening. That's something that's kind of been honestly floated out just for a while now into the ether by maybe a few SEC folks just hoping to maybe speak it into some kind of existence or using it as some kind of threat to, like you said, get maybe playoff stuff moving. I don't buy into that at all. I think ESPN story yesterday is one that a lot of us could have written the last year or so because we've heard similar things, but I don't think it's serious at all. I don't think it's something that any of us need to really take seriously. Down the road, it'll be interesting to watch as the gaps widen between the SEC and Big Ten and everybody else, and even further between the top 10 to 12 to 15 teams and everybody else. There's something to watch there for sure.
Hey, Ross, I don't know if you heard about this whole Jimbo Saban thing that happened a few days ago, but I'm sure I'm like the 100th person to ask you, but since we have you, what are your thoughts on what went down last week and subsequently, just how entertaining that was, but also just kind of how curious it was, the comments from both parties, and what were your thoughts on that?
I've been monitoring kind of Nick Saban's comments on NIL for several months now, and with every public comment that he made, I could tell he was getting more and more frustrated. I could tell the comments were increasing in his tone, his aggressiveness. It's kind of like a volcano rumbling, spewing lava, and then the explosion happens, right? And that's the case with Nick with a lot of issues, and I think this was one of those issues where he's frustrated at the current state of the recruiting landscape. However, I do think there's something else at play here that's probably been a little overshadowed. Nick was speaking to a group of business people in Birmingham, and like a lot of coaches in America, he's trying to get boosters and donors and the fan base to understand how important and how serious this NIL issue is. And that if you don't get in the game, so to speak, you may be left behind. So I think part of what he was doing was using Texas A&M and Deion Sanders and all this as a tool to ignite his own base and try to get them moving. And we're seeing that at a lot of schools. I was up at Ole Miss actually recently visiting with Lane Kiffin, and I'll have a Q&A with Lane that was very revealing tomorrow at SI.com. And one of the things he talked about was he's in the same position. He's trying to convince boosters that you got to play ball or you're going to get left behind.
Ross, with the SEC meetings coming up, the big debate is going to be 8 conference games versus 9 conference games, and you wrote that there's a split. What do you think is ultimately the best thing that they will do in that?
Yeah, like a lot of things in the SEC, no conference in America is kind of split so much right down the middle than the SEC as far as the haves and the have-nots, just based on financial capabilities, the athletic budget, historical success, championship wins, stuff like that. It really is split, kind of 7 in 7. There's a top 7, pretty clear top 7, and a pretty clear bottom 7. And they disagree on a lot. They disagree on a lot of legislation. They're often there's some a little bit of animosity and sometimes dissension among the two groups. And one of those issues is the scheduling format that's been kind of debated now for, seriously 4 to 6 months has been debated pretty well back and forth. So I think they're at a place where, if you throw in Texas and Oklahoma, they're kind of at an 8-8 split or a 7-7 split. Texas and Oklahoma won't have a official vote, but I think they've made their feelings clear of what they would want. And the top half wants a 9-game schedule. They want an extra SEC game, more value to the conference, more season ticket sales, or different season ticket package. The top half seems to want that. The bottom half seems to want 8 games. They seem to want to have that guaranteed kind of other non-conference win that they might need more than the top half. And that's kind of where they are. I don't know if they'll resolve things in Destin. I'm thinking at some point this summer, certainly by the end of the calendar year, they'll need to have some kind of solution. But it does seem pretty split, just about as split as any issue the group has been in maybe decades. You talk to some long timers in the SEC, so it is. It's I know everybody's making a big deal out of the SEC only playoff, but that is not what's under discussion. I don't think in Destin. The big talking point in discussion point in legislation will certainly be this SEC schedule, and then behind that, the transformation committee topics, which has been brought up in every conference meeting so far this spring, and then of course NIL.
Ross said the SEC has always been kind of in a lot of ways like the NFL. It's parity. I'm talking about money. All conferences eventually split up the money pretty much equally, although the Big 12 didn't do that for a long time. Is this something like this or the new addition and how they go about the future? They've always protected each other, even if Jimbo and Nick Saban are having their cat fight. Is there something that might keep that from happening down the road, that the SEC, no matter if you're Vanderbilt, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, or Mississippi State, maybe there's a cracking point, a breaking point?
Yeah, and, again, probably more than any other conference, there's such a delineation, like a dividing line, but in the SEC of, and it's mostly on revenue generating lines. Sure, you could see down the road, and I know some other leagues, you mentioned the Big 12, and I wonder if the Pac-12 will eventually do this too to protect some of their big brands, right? Like Oregon and USC, if they will distribute more to those schools. I'll be really curious to watch that and to watch, the SEC just did their new deal. And so I don't know that in this new deal will something be renegotiated, but in the next deal, whenever that comes. I think it's like a 12 or 15-year deal, I believe, or maybe it's 10 years. But either way, when that next deal comes over for the SEC, will the bigger brands, the top half of the league, will they get a bigger cut? I don't know. It's hard for me to see that now because, as you said, they have protected each other, and actually, they hire each other. So there's a lot of ADs in the top half of the league that have previously been at schools in the bottom half of the league. I can think of at least a couple. And so they kind of know how it is. So they do protect each other, and it's certainly hard to see that happening anytime soon. But who knows? We're certainly heading, as I mentioned earlier, for a model that's greatly different in college football. And maybe that would mean like the big, powers, the top 15, top 20, of teams, which there's probably half of those in the SEC. There's maybe the other third in the Big Ten, and then 3 or 4 across the other parts of the country. Maybe they do get a bigger cut in their respective leagues, or maybe they all come together, which has been talked about quite a bit over the last year or so.
Is this the most anticipated SEC or conference meetings you could imagine coming up?
Yeah, probably so, especially given the drama that unfolded with Jimbo and Nick. I mean, they'll both be there. All the coaches will be there. The athletic directors will be there. Ross Bjork of A&M and Greg Byrne of Alabama. So there'll probably be a little drama. I wish we were able to attend the actual meetings in the conference rooms instead of lurking in the lobby. But it'll be probably some drama, and I think that if I had to guess, Greg Sankey will probably make sure that the ADs and the coaches act appropriately, especially in front of the media, and stop the war of words.
Ross, thank you as always, man, for being a part of our show. You're on with us a lot, and we appreciate it.
No problem.
Ross Dellenger, he is with SI.com. He covers the hell out of college athletics, not just football, but mainly football. Does a great job with it. And that thing in Destin will be a must deal. Would be anyway.
Yeah, I think it's going to get too hyped up before we get there. Because
run out of gas? Yeah,
because you've already – I mean, Jimbo had his little local reporter talk, but outside of that, I mean, Saban's pretty much backed away from saying too much. And it was funny to see Alabama get a former A&M commit today. So – just that keeps throwing a little gasoline on it. But, yeah, I mean, I'm sure Lane Kiffin there will be plenty of guys entertaining to listen to. But in terms of Saban versus Jimbo, like it's some sort of showdown, I don't think we're going to get our popcorn's worth on that in Destin.
By the way, I know this is kind of a lame joke, but the quarterback's name is Eli Holstein. And for the school that studies cows so much, not to get a guy named Holstein. I mean, you can't,
Yeah, no, that I saw the name, and I said
scene.
that's as much Alabama as a quarterback you can get. Of course, Eli